Good morning, homeowners. It is day 39, and this is called The Trouble with Hidden Sins. If you were at church last night, you heard Jim Scudder from Dayspring Bible College give the message, and it was on this exact passage centered around the Valley of Achor. And you may want to check it out. It's pretty interesting stuff there, centered around some archaeology and things that he does through some interesting ministries that they have at his church and the college, where they do archaeological based videos that are essentially like apologetics videos and things like that. But anyway, this Valley of Achor, what is it? Well, Joshua chapter 7 is the aftermath of the Battle of Jericho. So you're probably familiar with that. The Israelites, they crossed over Jordan for the first time, and the first major test of faith that they have in their first major battle is Jericho. Jericho went well. They go there. They have no siege engines. They have no big equipment, anything like that. These are people that have been wandering around in the wilderness for decades, and the weapons they have on them. And they march around and they blow a horn, and God pulls down the walls of Jericho, and the city is taken. Now, after that, the next city is Ai, and Ai is you could call it kind of an outpost or a garrison or more like a settlement. It's not a huge city like Jericho, and so the idea is we're going to send this smaller force to Ai, and the Israelites are routed. And Joshua falls on his face before the Lord. He's like, in this big, huge, like, why is this happening, and all this kind of stuff. And the response is very simple. Hey, you guys didn't follow my instructions. Israel was specifically instructed not to take of like the spoils of the people in Jericho. And it is revealed that this man named Achan had taken a nice set of clothes that were Babylonian. He had taken some silver, and he had taken some gold, and he had hidden them in the floor of his tent. Now, what does that all have to do with today? Well, it was a hidden sin. Achan had taken the thing, no one had noticed it, no one knew about it, no one knew why God had turned his back on the Israelites. Achan had hidden the sin. However, the important thing to note, and we all know this, but the important thing to note is God knew. And so what it shows us is that there is no such thing as a hidden sin. Now, what does that have to do with us and our families? Families that have this sin or this hidden sin that they are dealing with, very often, ultimately, this comes back not to affect just us personally, but it affects our families. And when we suffer the chastisement of God, we suffer the punishment and the correction that God has for us. That is something that will reach to our families. Our families will pay the price. It's no different than, well, I can tell you that when I was in the military, when you're in basic training, the favorite method of discipline for a drill sergeant is not to punish the individual. It is to punish the whole group of people, because you learn a lesson very quickly that when you are held accountable for your wrongs, it is everyone that suffers, not just the individual wrongdoer. And that's very wise. How that is set up. And the reason it is wise is because when we are faced with a decision, and we're faced with the decision, are we going to do right or are we going to do wrong, we need to understand that the ramifications for that decision will reach and touch all of those around us, not just us personally. It's not just about us. It's about everybody. And so we have to consider that when we're faced with a decision, are we going to do right or are we going to do wrong? We need to make sure that our children understand that. We need to make sure that we understand that so that we can minimize the effect of our children when we do wrong. And then we also need to teach that concept to our children. I don't see anything wrong with having a consequence that touches all of your children when one does wrong. I think we should approach it on a case by case basis, but I don't see anything wrong with that. When I was young, that drove me absolutely nuts because I was the one that was usually the rule follower, and I didn't like being I didn't like the form of accountability that my brother had, or maybe even my sister had, touching me. I didn't think it was right. I didn't think it was fair. But what we know is that life isn't fair, and that there's wisdom in that. We know that as we're older. Now, you may disagree with me, and you say, "Well, that's not the best thing for my kids," and fine. That's your decision as a parent. What I do think is pretty universal, and that can be agreed upon from everybody listening to this, is that when we have sin, whether it's overt or hidden or whatever it is, when we have sin, the ramifications for that sin will affect those around us, including our children. It will then in turn affect our ability to raise our children. It can damage the rapport that we have with our children. It can damage our credibility in the eyes of our children. It can cause them to be less disciplined when receiving instruction from us. It's a big deal. So let's take that lesson from there. If you weren't there last night, I would encourage you to look that up once it goes online. If it's not there already, it was a pretty cool message. There's some pretty cool things talked about by Brother Scudder. So check it out, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody this weekend. I'm really hoping that you will come out to Sunday school on Sunday if you are able to, and I look forward to seeing you then. Have a great day.